These prophecies and predictions point to a landslide Trump victory in November election 2020. Whenever there's something big going on in the world, there will always be people whom, either by knowledge or a revelation, claim to know exactly what is going to happen. From the results of a World Cup final to the coming of the next antichrist, some of these predictions can be quite far-fetched and hard to believe. But when it comes to elections, there are many out there who have made good calls in the past. Join us in today's video as we show you some of the prophecies and predictions surrounding the upcoming 2020 US presidential election that point to a landslide victory for our president in office, Donald Trump. The Firefighters prophecy. Mark Taylor predicted the coming of Donald Trump as president of the United States back in April of 2011. That was long before the world-renowned businessman had even announced that he was planning on running for office. But who is Mark Taylor? Is he a political genius who has analyzed tons of information regarding news, the economy, and the country's political climate? Is he some savvy historian who came up with an algorithm to predict the outcomes of US elections? Or is he some sort of psychoanalyst who read Donald Trump's intentions before even he knew what he wanted? Well, none of the above actually. He is just a humble, retired firefighter who heard the words of God. According to him, the Lord spoke to him as he was watching Trump in the news one day, and whispered in his ear that he was listening to the voice of a US president. Naturally, as most of us would do in a similar situation, Mark's initial reaction was to find pen and paper and jot everything down, including all the nitty-gritty details about how America would be great again. Remember, this was back in 2012, how the US dollar would strengthen and our international relations improve. He thought that it would all start in the 2012 elections, but it took one more term for his prophecy to start proving real when Trump won the 2016 election, leaving even the most experienced political analysts completely dumbfounded. The firefighter turned prophet states that God put Trump in power to stop an anti-Christian movement, and that the mainstream news media would agree with Trump eventually, although that has not happened at all yet. And with respect to the 2020 election, God's words to Taylor leave no room for doubt, as they clearly stated that Trump is headed straight for a two-term presidency. So we'll see how things pan out with the coronavirus pandemic sending the US into a downward spiraling recession and all. And the Lord said, "Go to YouTube and tell them Trump will win again." According to YouTuber Teresa Graham, on October the 7th, 2016, God spoke to her and instructed her to go on her YouTube channel, Serve It Up Now, to announce who the winner of the 2016 election would be. The African-American prophet narrates the visions she had of Donald Trump falling from the sky and how all the states started turning red during the elections, and finally how he walked across a stage to shake Hillary Clinton's hand. God spoke to her and told her that it was Trump whom he had chosen for office and that it wasn't time for a female president. She also predicted that Trump would be cleared from being impeached, and she supposedly even predicted the coronavirus on December 31st, 2019. But sadly, or conveniently, this prediction was lost because she published it on Facebook and closed her account later on. If only there was a way to reactivate that account. We'll just have to take her word for it. More recently, in June 2020, Teresa went back on her YouTube channel to give us God's new message, assuring us that Trump would win again in November. She goes as far as suggesting that God himself personally instructed Trump to stand in front of St. John's Church with the Bible in his hand and warn the people of unleashing the military on protesters, an action that millions of people found extremely offensive. Apparently, Trump has been a godsend for the American people, with Vice President Pence as his right hand and direct link with the Almighty. Whether this prediction will turn true still remains to be seen. Apostle Wise preaches prophecy. Besides being notorious for his tweet depicting the 13 qualities he's looking for in a woman, and for openly calling anyone who fits the description to submit an application, practically daring them to become a prophet's wife, Apostle Wisepreach is also known for his prophecies. One of his latest turns out to be about Donald Trump's successful re-election this coming November. In a rather predictable way, his prophecy comes from a dream he had. The Kenyan prophet sees Trump re-elected for a second term by default, and that Trump will be God's tool to protect the church during these troubled times. He further stated that the coronavirus will be carried by the wind and spread all over, and that there will be a massive harvesting of souls, and there will be lawlessness throughout the land, but God is raising an army of people who will be his trumpets, and who will be led by Donald Trump. Apart from this particular dream, the self-proclaimed apostle also stated that in another dream, he saw himself accompanied by Trump, and that God told him that the second term would be marked by strong shifts in Trump's personal life, and it includes a supernatural visitation, after which Trump would sign another major executive order to be revealed by God himself. Pastor Jeremiah Johnson's dream. Things started in 2015 when Pastor Jeremiah heard God telling him that Trump would become a trumpet in the near future. After this prophetic revelation, the now best-selling author began to experience frequent and very lucid dreams where he would see what the future holds for America. So he immediately started writing everything down and has been publishing it all ever since. In terms of accuracy, Jeremiah's prophecies about Trump since 2015 are among the most accurate out there, and have held up best with the actual events that have unfolded ever since. His prophecies are also about the only ones that are not just tinged in red, politically speaking, and he has been the only modern-day prophet to predict both positive and negative events surrounding Trump's presidency. Almost a year ago, at the end of 2019, Johnson dreamt that he went to the White House and met with the president, who, upon looking into a mirror, saw an image of Abraham Lincoln staring back at him. After that, Johnson told Trump that he was there to reveal 3 major dangers he would have to face in 2020, which were racism, radical feminism, and abortion. Retrospectively, his predictions did seem to stand afoot with actual facts we've seen so far, with the death of George Floyd and the ensuing riots across the country being the most notorious example of it. According to the prophet, the fight against abortion is embodied by the 2020 presidential election, and it's clear to see the political split between the conservatives and the liberals. Johnson's interpretation of that dream is a victory against all 3 dangers, an ultimate victory over nationwide riots, and most importantly, a victory over baby-killing liberals as the direct result of Trump's re-election. Johnson had another dream in which Trump was running the Boston Marathon and fell right before the finish line, only to be picked up and helped across by a pair of old ladies. The prophet's interpretation of that dream is that Trump will win the election, but he'll need the support of the baby boomers for it to happen, a particular demography in the US that he describes as the true patriots of America. Back to his dream and the many parallels Johnson sees between Trump and Lincoln, one very dangerous additional prediction he made back in 2019 was that if the Democrats were not able to impeach Donald Trump, which as we now know they weren't, they would attempt with an assassination. Johnson firmly believes that Trump will win, and that he's waiting to be reaffirmed in office to take a stronger stance against all the rioting and civil unrest that's plaguing the country. Jonathan Cahn's prophecy. Cahn's take on Trump is initially based on an interpretation of the Bible and certain parallelisms that just happen to exist between the current president in office and a certain Jewish religious figure from 53 years ago. You see, in Jewish tradition, every 50 years they celebrate the Jubilee, a special year in which all sins are forgiven, all debts pardoned, and all slaves return to their rightful land. Back in 1967, the Jewish celebrated the Jubilee, and the main figure of the event was a rabbi called Horn. The next Jubilee was in 2017, and this time around it was the newly elected US president to take office who would be a central figure for the Jewish people. As he proclaimed that year for the first time in history, the United States would henceforth recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Khan goes a step further and identifies Trump as King Cyrus reborn thanks to a series of unlikely connections that go from his name and surname, the year he was born, and his age when he came into office. By now, it's more than clear that not only does Khan see Trump as the winner in the upcoming election, but also as a sort of world president that was sent by God to restore Jewish people to their rightful place on earth. As events unfold in the coming weeks, we'll see whether these prophecies and predictions hold up or not. In the meantime, which of these modern prophets do you consider to be more trustworthy? Do you believe they were truly told by God to speak to us on his behalf? Or do you think it's just a scam from a new breed of YouTube evangelists to sell books and take people's money in the form of donations? Let us know in the comments section down below. And don't forget to share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more videos. Thanks for watching.